it's review time. Spoiler alert. If you have not read these books, or you're in the process of reading them, I suggest you don't watch this interview. Okay, welcome back. Now, Prince books. Alright, just recently, I bought this one in mid-November last year and this one in late December. I've now finished reading both books and I'm just going to do a brief review on both of them. I'm basically going to talk a bit about the plot, how they came together, and which one of these I definitely prefer. Basically, ever since Prince died, there's been an absolute flood of books coming out. Here's just a sample. I don't have all of them. You might recognise some of these. These two here are probably the two worst. These are just definitely just cash-in biographies. I can't really get any of them. I mean, the first one looked good, but it's also known as another title, but I just could not get into it, basically. Same with this one, very Mick Wall. I usually like his work, but this was definitely a cash-in. Not recommended in the slightest, even if it's $1. This one was definitely a much better, basically. I mean, Mighty, some people don't want to read it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's actually very heartfelt and honest. This one, not bad. I mean, it was a collection of interviews. These two here, which I consider excellent, basically and totally essential. Hamish Witter's 50 Famous Bootlegs, probably the first ever proper review of basically Prince bootlegs, lots of concerts and stuff. I mean, basically, he actually kept a blog up. I actually know this guy quite well. He's actually a local New Zealander. He did a really good job. If you ever see this book, I suspect it's probably out of print now. I would recommend buying it and reading it. It's an excellent book. Okay, this one too, of course, is absolutely essential. I've learned, even someone who knows as much about Prince as me, and using Prince Vault, this is incredible. This is one of the finest books ever written. Dwayne Toodle's Purple Rain Chronicles. Basically, it's all about studio work in 83, 84. Absolutely flawless. If you see it too, I would buy it. And also, Toodle was working on basically 85, 86, and also 87, 88. So just can't wait, basically, just amazing. But what we're going to talk about is two books that came out late last year. First, we're going to talk about Prince's The Beautiful Ones. Now, this book was actually announced in February 2016. Remember, I did a little video about it way back in the midst of time. Prince was going to write his own biography and call it The Beautiful Ones, and he actually did start writing, but unfortunately what happened was he died, as we all know. But before he passed on, he'd already signed up. He actually sent out a scout to actually go around and find somebody who would write them with him, because I mean, people don't write these books by themselves. They always have a ghostwriter. And don't shoot me just for announcing the messenger, but I have noticed a high percentage of these ghostwriters, same here, seem to have how shall I say, Yiddish sounding names. I mean, Piepenbring, I don't know if that's German or Jewish, but anyway, Piepenbring and Ritz both are excellent authors. I'm not going to shit on them. I mean, David Ritz also wrote Tortured Soul, The Life of Marvin Gaye, which I consider as one of the finest books ever written, basically, and I think he's very honest. And this Piepenbring guy, now he was 29 years old, and basically he was a big time Prince fan. Originally, people were saying, no, we don't want some Prince fan who's absolutely blinded by Prince's star power to write the book. But what he actually found out was that Piepenbring actually did have some good writing credentials, and even though he was a huge Prince fan, he clearly had a lot of sincere respect for his music and his art, and a lot of sensitivity he could bring to the project. And in a lot of ways, he was a very knowledgeable fan, like a Per Nilsson or a Dwayne Toodle. So what happened was, basically, this guy met up with Prince a couple of times. He actually followed Prince around onto one of his piano microphone tours. He met up with him in Melbourne. Now, in Melbourne, just before Prince came to New Zealand and played to me, basically Prince handed him the manuscript of his first few chapters of his life story, which kind of looked like this. And basically he said to Dan, now look, there's my first notes. What I want you to do is I want you to turn them into something readable. And actually Prince's handwriting, even though it's quite complex, it was very readable. And actually what's happened in this book is they've actually printed, this first part is actually Prince's notes put into typing. Big lettering. Now, and it's actually really good, but it only goes up to about 7 or 8 chapters. It only really sort of goes up to, well, where does that mean? Because I mean, I read this a few months ago, yeah. Basically, it only goes up to like the early 1980, but still, it's really, really interesting. And what he does, because there was only a few pages, you have to fill up a whole big book, basically. It's a big hardbound book, probably not the cheapest, but what we get in return is basically 40 pages of Dan's story about how he got into the project and how he met up with Prince. And then basically, when he was writing the next part of Prince's manuscript, he got the phone calls from Paisley saying, man, Prince is dead, and he's like, he was just completely blown over. He just couldn't believe it because, and this adds more fuel to the fact that, Prince definitely was an open drug addict and something sinister happened with his death, because he said that when Prince died, he was completely caught unaware, that he did not know this had happened. He was just shocked. And like, I think with everyone, I mean, Prince's death was just such an extreme surprise because it wasn't expected. But anyway, so Dan knew he had to carry on the story himself, and instead of actually finishing Prince's story for him, he didn't want to heave words into his mouth. What he decided to do merely was basically to print it. Unfortunately, after Prince died, they actually got to walk around the vault, and basically in the actual vault itself, apparently there was a pile of stuff, and Prince had actually left saying for Dan, and that included all the photographs and basically part of a photo album that Prince had put out, been starting in the 70s, and you get to see, okay, more spoiler alert, this is a photo album Prince started in 78, it's actually his writing and lots of photos, early photos of Prince with a massive afro and stuff, some of them are quite funny. You actually get to see what Bernadette Anderson looks like, and pretty much, you know, pictures of his father, when his father still had hair, you know, lots of afros, you know, yep, and Prince's first house, basically, which is quite funny. That's the one in Adena where he recorded basically Dirty Mind and auditioned Gail Chapman and Des Dickerson. And also what you get thrown into is that Prince had this hilarious sort of permed hairdo, which I thought, permed afro hairdo, which I thought was quite funny. That's kind of the transition phase between the afro and the 79 coiffure. This photo I really like, showing him walking down the stairs in a swanky motel in 77. In the studio, basically. There's lots of original stuff here. See, this is like the original lyrics to Soft and Wet, you know, soft Angora fur, the GNC, the soft wet love that you have for me, you know. It's actually got really neat handwriting. It's just a lot of stuff here. See, there's the part about the Angora fur, you know, that Chris Moon had, you know, and even did like his own press kit, as you can see, which is really funny. And by the way, even though I'm showing this stuff, I strongly recommend you buy this book. Basically, buy it. You know, a lot of early, I'm not going to show you everything in here, but later on it shows some more photos of just Prince going up to the Purple Rain era, and also some more rare material, like this is a very good shot here showing Prince of Big Chick, basically. And also what you get to is basically photos of song lyrics in the autobiography, pretty much. So he's definitely filling it up. Now the interesting part here is there's a lot of really old photos before that stuff showing Prince in early 1960. And just one thing I want to observe upon is this is Prince's mother. This is the famous Mattie Shaw. And this might explain where Prince gets his very light skin colour from. Because even though she is listed as black and clearly has some black features, like she's got pretty big lips, for instance, she definitely has very pale skin for a black person. Incredibly pale. There's one picture here, it's actually, she's in colour. And she almost, people said that, you know, she was wearing that Marilyn Monroe lookout. Now this is Prince's mother in 1956. Now she could almost pass for white or Italian there easily, couldn't she? But, you know, but that's basically, and the other thing I get about it too, rather than just taking pot shots at a race, is that in some of these photos, she married John, I think, because John had a steady job and John could give her children. Is that you could tell that she was getting bored. This photo here, she looks quite bored, don't you think? Because she got bored with John after a while. She was definitely, apparently, as Prince puts, she was definitely a bit of a party girl. She'd have to go dancing, she'd have to go around the clubs and things. And John was very much, you know, a no-nonsense type worker man, you know, so that's how that marriage fell apart. But obviously she found what she was looking for with Hayward Baker, who Prince describes as being all flashy in a sort of Morris Day type way. And Prince really does, in his notes, I mean, talks about how, you know, his parents really influenced his personality, but at the same time he also developed his own personality out of them. And he talks about how his mother was the wild side, you know, the fiery side, and his father was the stable, hard-working, persevering side in a lot of ways. And it reminds me a lot of Jimi Hendrix, because if you read books about Hendrix, there's his mother, Lucille Jeter. She was absolutely gorgeous, and she also was a very young party girl. The other thing you have to realise too is there was a big age gap between Prince's mother and Prince's father. Basically, Prince's father was about 17, 18 years older than his mother. I mean, his mother was 24 when Prince was born, but his father was was already my age, basically, well into his 40s when Prince and Tycho were born. And of course, you get to see pictures of little baby Prince. There you are, basically. Very young Prince there. Okay, so that's long and show the book. Overall, the writing is excellent. It's probably a bit, you know, sparse on the content. If you wanted a definitive biography of Prince, it's probably not the book. It's really sort of more like a general reminiscence in the sort of Barack Obama lessons of my father type way. It's a very nice collectible item. I mean, the photos in it alone are great. I mean, there's some original lyric sheets and things. It's a bit pricey, but it's still a good book, and I give it an 8 out of 10. I wouldn't give it a 10 because it is definitely, you know, padding a bit. But on the other hand, now the second book I'm going to talk about. So there you are, Morris Day, A Princely Life and Funk. Now I've already alluded to some of the chapters of it in the second voices. Now again, there's going to be some plot killers here. This is excellent. Now there have been a lot of Prince associates who have written books about their time with Prince, and I think Morris Day was due to write a biography anyway, and basically, okay, a lot of people would buy this because of Morris's association with Prince, but I really think you should buy it too for the sense that you learn more about Morris Day himself as a person, because Morris has had his own incredible life with and without Prince, and I mean, something this book really lacks. This book really sort of lacks the full warmth and empathy that you get in this book. This book here, Morris, you feel like Morris Day is talking to you, and he even has like personalities. Like through the book, you've got Prince's voice talking in his ear, but you also have a character that comes along after the Purple Rain era called MD, and MD is like this wild party side. Morris Day is addicted to stuff basically. MD is always telling him, it was okay that he was addicted to crack, and he had a woman falling at his feet, and he had platinum hits and money and stuff, and and then of course it mentions how Morris, he had a pretty rough early life, because basically his real father, Dickie Day, was in the Navy or something, and he died, and then after that, basically she met up with a man called his mother. Again, she was very young, she was very much a party woman, but as she got older, she became very bright, and she had a lot of great ideas. I think one interesting idea he mentions is that Lavonne Doherty, his mother's name, she actually came up with the idea for the Mall of Americas in Minnesota, and she actually got to see a congressman. She had drawn out the plans and everything. This is around 1970. And of course, they built it, and they, of course, never credited her with any of the idea. To them, they're just another single black woman living in a Section 8 welfare property, basically. He mentions how close he is to his brother and sister, especially his younger brother, Jesse Hamer Jr., basically. And, of course, Mr. Hamer was the stepfather they had to get away from when they moved from Springfield, Illinois. He mentions how he meets Prince and just how much he really liked Prince's group, and then he talks about how originally, after Prince got signed to Warner Brothers, Morris and the others felt a bit left out, but then he went around to the West Coast and did stuff like cleaning cars and renting cars, and then finally he heard Soft and Wet on the radio, knew who it was, and then one of his mates said, "Morris, weren't you with that guy?" And he said, "Yeah, I was." He said, "I don't believe it." And then Morris thought, "Fuck this," because he'd already been a young father. He got himself into trouble. That's, if you look at a Time album and you see the term Tiana music, basically Tiana was the name of his first daughter. But anyway, Morris decided, late 79, he went back to Minneapolis and thought, well, if I want to get anywhere with music, instead of doing this shit like renting out cars, I need to go and join Prince. I want my own career, but I realized the way to a music career is through Prince, because Prince made it, why can't I? And basically, so Morris goes to see Prince. Prince actually hooks up with him, he's really friendly, he offers him a job as his videographer. Basically, originally Morris wanted to jump in the skin and get rid of Bobby Z, but Prince just said, "Yo, can you work a video camera?" And Morris said, "I will learn." And he talked about how he learned quickly and he became really good at it, and basically he was the dude jacking up the video. And of course at the same time, because Prince wasn't paying him much, and he was kind of still supporting Jennifer and Tiana, he got a second job, basically, this will really make you guys laugh, singing in a band called Enterprise, otherwise known as the Enterprising Band of Pleasure. And basically what happened was they wanted a new drummer, and it turned out Prince had taken the drummer, and then basically he found out that later on that he was playing a groove in the studio. Prince gave Enterprise some time. The groove was Party Up. Prince said, "I like that song, take the song, start a group around you." Morris started the group. And you actually learn the chronology of the times a bit different from videos I told you, and from what I've read so far, it seems like Prince and Morris basically recorded all the songs for the first Time album in early 81. They hadn't even got the group together yet. I mean, basically, Jam and Lewis and Monty Moore were still playing in Flight Time. Jesse and Jelly Bean were still basically outside of Minneapolis. And Prince said, and what happened was the music was mixed, it was done. I mean, Morris went back to being Prince's videographer and still working in Enterprise, and then finally Prince called and said, "Look, man, when you get your band together," and I was like, "What band?" He goes, "Get It Up's a hit." He said, "Yeah, we haven't even done it yet." And he goes, "I released it, it's a hit, we need a band." So basically Morris had to get his butt into the studio. He managed to talk the guys from Flight Time in. Originally he was going to play drums, the other story, he got Alexander said, "No, I need some cash." Prince said no, so then basically, and also it's mentioned that Alexander was already on the drugs. So Alexander O'Neill, he had a big hit with Fake in 1985 and signed to the Taboo label and worked with Jam and Lewis. But back then he was basically like everyone else, wanting to be a big star. And he mentioned at one stage you could almost call the album Prince Presents Morris Day, which made me laugh. But anyway, so they managed to get the group together. I mean, they played a tape of Jesse Johnson's guitar music, and Prince just said, "Get him," basically. So he was in the group. Jelly Bean came aboard as two when Morris was in the drummer, and the group was released. The next thing you know, they were basically playing First Avenue and playing on the Controversy tour. Things went well, but Morris always mentions about how even though Morris got quite a bit of money for being in Purple Rain and time got exposure, he wanted more. And the one thing that really drove a wedge in their relationship was the firing of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. And basically the new time, of people like Paul Peterson never worked out. So Morris leaves him, he has a solo career, but by that time he's high on crack. But then halfway through he gets off the cocaine, the marijuana and the crack, and around 86 cleans his life up and basically meets a woman called Judy, and he marries Judy. They have 2 children, and then a 3rd child after they have a breakup in the 90s and have a reconciliation. And he basically is a nice family man for a while, but for some reason the MD spirit won't go away, and he breaks up with this woman Judy, and then he has 2 more love children, and then finally after he gets the time back together in 1989, they become a sort of live draw around Minneapolis, and then they sign up with Prince in 1990. Of course, they do Corporate World and Graffiti Bridge, which brings them a bit of cash, but not much renown. Still through the 90s, he keeps playing with the time, and then through into the 2000s, it continues. And in 2005, Prince calls him back into the studio and makes some slamming tracks. But what happens though is that it's about to relaunch Morris. Prince gives him a lecture about being a Jehovah's Witness, and he says, "I'm only going to do this stuff with you if you become a Jehovah's Witness." Morris says no. They have a falling out. He walks off. Then in 2007, they also played that 1999 rave show. They didn't like it though, but they still played it. But then in 2000 and I think it was 7, there was supposed to be a show called the 070707, and basically Morris got angry with Prince because Morris said the time will play on it. They had to come out to Minneapolis and get their own accommodation, and then basically Prince put them into a really shitty motel, and then while they were a really shitty motel, Prince said, "No, you guys have been dropped from the bill, no explanation." And that causes a massive falling out that lasts virtually right up to Prince's death. Just a little while before Prince's death, there's a live show night at sorry, this is a big spoiler here, at Paisley Park. Morris and Prince meet up, and basically they reconcile, best friends. They say some very tender things to each other, and it looks like they're about to continue on their friendship, and then basically bang, Prince passes on. And of course, Morris, like everyone else in the circle, Sheila E., Mighty, and even Dan Piepenbring, they're all just shocked, and they just spend a while just angry, and that's why there's a bit of a gap between all the good books like this and then all the rubbish ones like Ben Greenman and Mick Wall rushing their books out as soon as Prince dies, along with a flood of magazines. You saw that in some of my earlier videos. But it's absolutely heartfelt book. I'll probably kill most plot, but I still say buy this book and read it. It's extremely honest, and it is funny. The multiple voices thing does work. His Prince voice is absolutely spot on. The whole time is Prince is quite critical of him halfway through the book, and then he even says that he likes MD more than he likes Morris, and Morris gets annoyed, but towards the end, him and Prince reconcile, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I think the sad thing about this book, though, is I know this is the only copy I've seen in New Zealand. I've got the feeling this book has a much more limited distribution than this one, because lately this one is just everywhere. And finally, too, there was a review of this book in this Listener magazine, so like the New Zealand sort of TV and arts magazine, by a guy called Graham Reed, who's a New Zealand muso sort of reviewer, but mainly he's just a typical white guy who just basically likes punk groups and rock groups. He's not really a fan of black music. And he basically talks about this book. He says he doesn't really like it, saying it's just basically padded up with filler. But to give you an idea of how little he knows about Prince, he says this photo is Prince in 1991. Now, does that look like Prince in 1991 to you? That is clearly a Purple Rain era photo. So basically, this is how little and how regarded Prince is and is known in New Zealand. So there you are. There's my double banger. Sheila E. is next, but I'm going to do it next week. So Morris Day book, overall, 10 out of 10. It's absolutely stunning. I think it's probably one of the best books I've ever read. I think Morris Day and David Ritz have absolutely pulled one out of the bag. When I saw that David Ritz was going to be the ghostwriter, I thought, okay, and the co-writer, I thought, okay, this is going to be great, because there's a book out there, he wrote it years and years ago, Divided Soul, The Life of Marvin Gaye by David Ritz. I absolutely recommend it. Okay, I know they're Jewish. The fact remains, in my opinion, these Jewish guys are the best music writers out there. And really, when it even comes to music and management, honestly, I think, rather than being anti-Semitic, I'm going to be pro-Semitic. Jewish people have done more to further popular music, especially for black people, than any other group in the world, basically. Jews are instrumental in running record companies, promoting the music, getting it out there, spreading liberal ideas for your music. And even if you look at Prince's career, you'll see that there have been a heap of Jewish people who've helped him along. Warner Brothers, of course, Jewish label, Mo Austin, Lenny Waronker, Jeff Gold, all these people promoted the crap out of Prince's music. Then, of course, you've got, I'm not sure if Alan Leeds is Jewish, but he had Jewish people in his band like Lisa Coleman, Wendy Melvoin, and Bobby Z and his brother, David Z were Jewish. Matt Fink was Jewish. So when Prince did the Rainbow Children in 2001, and I heard him running down Jews pleased to meet you, Mrs. Pilstein, I got really angry because if it wasn't for Jewish people, Prince would not have a career, basically. I mean, I know he had the raw talent and the funk and he had all the black guys, but seriously, I mean, these Jewish people, we owe them a big thank you because they really brought Prince out into the mainstream. Because could you imagine some hardcore Christian label promoting Prince? Definitely not. So there you are. And of course, even one Jew basically nearly lost his career over. I mean, Raven to the Joy Fantastic, Clive Davis of Arista Records, basically had a massive hit with Santana's comeback album, Supernatural. But then Prince's Raven to the Joy Fantastic was such a colossal flop. I mean, basically his own company fired him, and that's when Clive Davis went away and started J Records. Unfortunately, he got back signing Ja Rule and Jennifer Lopez amongst others. So there you are. So anyone who accuses me of anti-Semitism, they should be accusing me of pro-Semitism, because seriously, think about it all in the comments now. I mean, if you take away all these people, okay, I won't even say the Jewish because it's probably limiting them, but people of the Jewish faith and basically have Jewish-sounding names, I mean, i.e. Yiddish names. If you take them out of Prince's career, what do you really have left? You'd have an artist that had a lot less promotion, basically. And Warners were proud of him. I mean, if you look at ads and Bill and things, usually Warners would have a big ad saying #1 and it's in purple, and we love our artists and things. So there you are. Shalom, and may you all live to see the dawn.